Thank you everyone for coming to EDS Wisconsin Presents How to Make May EDS Awareness Month in Your Community or State with Stephanie Vander and Essex. Thank you, Stephanie, for being here and for doing this presentation for us.
Hello. Essex is not here right now. She gets a little antsy after a while and she's not the best teacher, but at the very end, I'll go grab her so you guys can see her in real life, but I'll tell you guys about her during the presentation. So who am I and why am I even remotely qualified to teach you about this? I am married to my husband, Nathan, and we do have 2 dogs. I did mention Essex. Essex was the dog I had at the time that I had the proclamation done last year. She's 2. And then we have a younger dog named Aura. She's 8 months old. I did serve on the City of Whitewater Common Council from 2011 to 2018, beginning my junior year of college at UW-Whitewater, which does in fact mean that there is a place crazy enough to put a 20-year-old on the city council. So I like to joke that I could issue liquor licenses before I could buy liquor, which is a true fact. I chaired that committee before I could buy alcohol. I graduated with my bachelor's magna cum laude in political science honors from UW-Whitewater, and I have completed most of my master's in business administration at the same university. I was diagnosed with classical Ehlers-Danlos syndrome March 14th of 2016, so almost 3 years ago this week, actually. I am a blogger for EDS Wisconsin, and when I'm not doing that, I do work in property management and marketing, and right now I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that primarily from home because my husband and I just relocated from Whitewater to Racine a short time ago. In my spare time, I like to write, I color, I love public speaking, and if you hadn't guessed, I love spending time with my dogs. They're basically my whole world. If dogs could be actual children, mine are as close as you can get. Here are the girls. I'm obsessed with them. I figured puppy breaks are necessary during any time you have to learn something, especially if it's about the government. Aura is the littler one, the one who actually looks like she's smiling. Essex is the diva of the 2, so she usually looks like she's not. She's also the one with the much larger ears. She could probably get a satellite signal from those ears. So back to actual business of what we're here to do, which is learn about how to get a government of some sort to proclaim EDS Awareness Month, which, as this whole group knows, is in May. The critical part of what I'm going to tell you is that you need to do your homework. Now, when I did this, I cheated. I mean, I didn't actually cheat like in an unethical way, but it's a lot easier when you're on the city council to get your proclamation on an agenda versus if you're a regular person. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible. And in fact, it's actually quite simple to do. It's just important to understand what you're doing before you do it. The key part before you do anything else is to make sure that you already have the proclamation written. We have the template for you, and we'll get there as we get a little further into the presentations. I'm not going to go there yet. It's made for you to change it as you need and as you see fit. So if there's parts of it you don't like, and obviously you'll need to change it for your city or state, but you do need to change it. But keep in mind that the representatives, even at the local level, are often very busy. They're writing their own bills, they're writing their own laws, and they like to help with these types of things, but that's not necessarily how they spend their time. They want to help and garner attention for a cause, but they can't devote time to writing them, and they don't necessarily have the information we do about them. They are not going to be able to learn as much about EDS as we already know. So if we can provide something for them in writing, they're going to be able to provide the sponsorship that we need in order to get that taken care of. So it's much easier if we come to them and say, here's what we'd like for you to sponsor and get proclaimed for the state or the city versus can you write something proclaiming EDS Awareness Month because EDS is bad. We really need to give them something to work with. There is more homework than that though. You need to decide first where you want to have your proclamation done. It can be done locally where you live, like I did last year. It can be done at the state level, or it can even be done at the federal level with a member of Congress. Keep in mind, as you go further up, it is going to get a lot harder. Local members of your city council are usually fairly easy to get a hold of. Their phone numbers and addresses and email addresses are usually their personal phone numbers, personal addresses, and they usually have a city email that they regularly check. And honestly, depending on where you live, they might even be people that you routinely run into. And so if you're going with a city proclamation, that's probably going to be the easiest route for you. Now, that's not in any way meant to be a discouragement. It's just meant to be a reality. People who work at the local level, often that's not their full-time job. They're not usually getting paid very much, if anything at all, which means that they're in it just to help people. And so they're usually very willing to help you. They're also nonpartisan. So there's not really anything to worry about in terms of them being concerned about any sort of partisan issue about healthcare or anything like that. Last year I did it in my city because I was serving on the city council. But this year I'm actually working with a state representative to have EDS Awareness Month declared for the state of Wisconsin. I do have a friend in the legislature, but I'm working with my own representative as well. But the homework means you need to find out who represents you. Thankfully, with the internet, it's easy if you don't already know. The example I used is Wisconsin here. There's a super great tool that the state of Wisconsin has. You literally type your address in. I couldn't fit the whole screen here, but just up off to the right of what you can see here, you type in your street address, and it will literally tell you exactly who your senator and representative are, including all their contact information. If you're someone who regularly participates in elections and is very active in local government, you probably already know who your representative is, but it's very unlikely you know their email and phone number just in your mind. That would be probably very weird and probably something that's not the case. So even if you know who they are, it's helpful to look them up and gather that information. But you should contact the person who specifically represents you, even if there's another person who you know, because it's their job to serve the people who they represent. So that's who I'm working with, is my representative. Generally, these types of things are done in the assembly in the state of Wisconsin and not in the Senate. And so I'm working with the assembly representative, and I'm hoping to hear back from them very shortly. Now, what do you do once you have that information? You should send them an email first. It's like I said, you need to send them that information, send them the proclamation. You need to call them by their appropriate title when you greet them. Whether you're emailing a city council member, a member of the state legislature, you should figure out what the appropriate way to address them is. If you're emailing someone other than a city council member, you should also assume that it's probably going to be read by a member of their staff as well. So when I email a legislature member, I usually say, greetings, representative, last name, and staff. That's the most appropriate and polite way to greet them. You generally want to avoid using Mr., Ms. It's polite and appropriate to acknowledge the work they've done to get the title that they have. Depending where you live and what they generally use, in Whitewater, people used various terms, usually common council member or just council member was what most people refer to us as. I always encourage you to share a personal story with them. Why should they do this? I mean, they don't want you to just say, here's this proclamation, and the proclamation is well written. It certainly has information in it about why it's important that May be EDS Awareness Month. But that alone is not enough. I think it's very important when you're emailing them and speaking with them to tell them about what happened to you or your son or your daughter or your mother or whomever, or more than one story. Don't send a super long email though. You want them to be able to read it relatively quickly. but you want them to understand why it's important to spread awareness. The email I sent included a story. It included that what the average diagnosis time is, which I believe the EDS Society right now says is 22 years. For me, it was 13. And I told them in my email that for me, I considered that to be very fortunate that it was only 13 years. I explained that I now use a wheelchair much of the time because of what has occurred to me, and that with early diagnosis and proper treatment, I may have been able to avoid that. I also explained that because the condition is invisible, there's a lot of judgment and kickback that I get from society when using handicap parking, and that there are major issues when you have a condition that people can't see and they have no idea how sick you truly are. And I think it's important to help them understand that we don't know which members of our society have this condition or other conditions, but we want them to understand why they should help us. And obviously, this is something that's emotional for all of us. We've all been in those situations where we felt upset about it, and there's a reason that we're all putting this much work into it. And we're asking them to put work into it too, and we want to explain to them why they should. You also want to thank them for their time and any consideration they give to your request. Welcome any questions they would have, and then I usually give them my phone number as well. Excuse me, I'm very sick. I usually wait. If I don't hear back from them in about a week, I usually will follow up with their staffs at the office and just make sure they've received it and get a follow-up on kind of where it is in that process. What does it actually look like? This is what I sent. This document will be available. We're going to put it in the chat as a Word document, so you'll actually be able to edit it. This is obviously a screenshot here. This is what was sent for the state of Wisconsin. They will have to make some changes. There are some requirements when you're doing proclamations and bills and those types of things. But this way they have an understanding of what you're looking for them to state. What about when it's over? So this was the proclamation I did last year in Whitewater. It's actually right here on my desk. They usually have a ceremony and they'll have you, because I was on the council, I was able to give a speech, but they would have the person who proposed it come in and give a speech as well if you wanted to, and kind of explain why you did this. You'll be able to invite other people. Generally, they'll let you know about the ceremony, the signing of it, and then they'll give you an official, actual proclamation of EDS Awareness Month. So now you have a fancy piece of paper. Cool, that's what you wanted, just a fancy piece of paper and everything's great and you're done. You should try to get people to attend the meeting. If you have members of the organization who can go, it's great because it's always done in a public meeting. They don't like secretly have these meetings where they do these proclamations. It's done publicly. And that way you can get photos of the officials who have helped you with the process. That also helps other officials want to do it in the future because it makes them see that it's appreciated. It also helps us because then we have photos of these events as well. We definitely, if it's EDS Wisconsin, but other organizations as well, if they're watching this in the future, should write a press release and send it to various news sources. There's no guarantee they're going to print it, but there's definitely the opportunity for free press. That would have, in it the proclamation, the information about why we did it, and it's an opportunity for EDS to get in the news and for other people to read about it. It's also an opportunity to post all over social media because we did a lot of hard work to get this done. Social media is affordable and it's effective, and because this is something that the government signed off on, they generally see it as more official and it can help raise awareness. Overall, though, what I would say, and this is a story that I shared recently with my friends, is that ultimately what we're trying to do is raise awareness and help people. We're trying to help people who are in situations where they don't know what to do, or they're lost or confused, or need help with a diagnosis, or they got a diagnosis and they don't know where to go. And I don't even live in Whitewater anymore, and I was back there last week, and I had stopped for coffee, and someone actually approached me because she remembered me getting this proclamation done last May, and her daughter had just gotten diagnosed with EDS, and she wanted to know if I would talk to her about how to live with this and what it means. And so even if it like never does anything else and it never gets over every single news source in the world, it could help other people. And I think that's important to remember, is that that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is help people. It really, I mean, to me, was so incredibly touching that she had remembered that I did that and that I had given that presentation. And so if you do this and you speak in your community, you don't know, there might be someone who doesn't even know that there are organizations to help people with EDS. There could be people who have EDS who don't know that we could support them. And there's a lot of opportunity there. So if you're still here and you have questions, I'm happy to take them. As you can see, it's not really a complicated process. We're going to provide the document for you to use to do the proclamation, as well as a sign up, because we don't want 15 people to try to get the city of Middleton to proclaim EDS Awareness Month. Essex and Aura would like to know if anyone has treats. But I'm happy to take any questions you have now.
So I put the Word document in the chat section, and when we put this onto YouTube, I will put a link to the Word document in the comment section under the video on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe. And I'm actually going to put a link here right now in the chat section. What this link is for is so that people can register to tell us where they will be doing the proclamation. Like she said, we don't need a bunch of people doing one location. On the other hand, if we have more than one person who wants to do the same place, you guys would be able to contact each other and work together to do that. Another link that I'm going to share with you right now is for state contacts. Some of these links are broken, but it will still take you to the page, and actually those kind of went together, but you can click on those. There's two separate links there. So it'll go to the state page where you can inquire about proclamations. Some of the states actually have a website where you can fill out a form for them and you know, ask them if they will do a proclamation.
I just saw the question about the county board. You can do it at the county level. Counties don't do a lot of this kind of work, so it would really depend if they were interested in doing it. They don't do as much legislating as cities and states and the federal government, but certainly if they're willing to proclaim it for the county, it's not outside of their ability to do so. Anything else? You can. You can ask as many cities as you want. Now, if you don't live in a city, people may be less willing to help you.
Can you restate the question?
The question was whether or not you can do more than one city at a time. Now, generally, people are approached by their own constituents about doing these kinds of things. So I would encourage people to try to first approach their own representatives before branching out and trying to ask more than one city. There's nothing that says the city couldn't do a proclamation based on, you know, a question from a person who doesn't live there. But it really should come from someone who lives in the community directly to a person who represents them.
Do you have a template for how you have contacted the press in the past to get them to come to these events, or an article maybe that you could share with us, like for a press release or anything like that.
We do have the press is always at public meetings. They come to every meeting of the city council. That's just what they do.
Okay.
They have actually a table at city council meetings. So that's the plus side, is that part of what their job is. There's always someone assigned to city council meetings. And if you're in a bigger city, there are multiple reporters assigned to it. So that's something that is a bonus, is that you basically get press coverage just by being there.
So should people,
I didn't have to send a press release. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, should people send information like to the newspaper about that though?
Yes. Like about the meeting or after it's done?
Yeah, just about the proclamation.
Well, the proclamation itself, if you're looking to get outside of the paper that covers the meeting itself, there's usually one or two papers that, because they cover everything that happens at the meeting. I would encourage you to definitely send out a press release to any other news source in the region that would be interested. Just stating that, you know, it's been officially declared by the city of whatever, that May is EDS Awareness Month, and provide the proclamation, and then provide any information that we as an organization would like for them to know for the article, and that we'd be happy to do an interview with them by phone or email or however they would like.
Okay, so maybe we can get a sample press release out to people so that they don't have to write it. They can just kind of fill in the blanks for themselves, and that might be helpful for people to get more coverage as well.
Yeah, I can write one up for sure. Any other questions?
Okay, well, if there's not any more questions, did you have anything else that you wanted to share, Stephanie?
I mean, I would definitely encourage everyone to at least try to do this. It's not hard, and honestly, especially at the city level, they don't hear from their constituents very often. I mean, in my 7 years on the city council, I was lucky to hear from constituents once a month. So if someone wanted my help, I was happy to give it to them. So at the level that they're going to tell you no, especially if you've already done the work and all you're asking them to do is take this to the city and say, like, hey, this is something that's impacting our community. Here are the people, and they're really impacted by this. I'm dead serious when I say the people in at the city council. I mean, I'm in bigger cities, maybe. I know there's controversy in city councils, but generally in relatively small areas, especially in a place like Wisconsin, most city council members are truly in it for the right reasons, even if they have differing opinions, because they're not getting rich doing it and they want to help you. No, for larger cities, you definitely should still reach out to your city. Sorry, the question was, if you're in a larger city, are you better off reaching out to the state? There's really no difference. You can certainly reach out to your city and your state. The question, they're in Arizona. You can certainly reach out to the city if you're in a big city. In a big city, there are lots of council members usually, so you might actually have more luck. Most cities, you have both at-large representatives and a district representative, and then you could also contact the state. So there's no reason just because you live in a large city that you wouldn't be able to contact your city representative. They just probably do get contacted by more constituents than in a small town like Whitewater.
I just shared again a link to the document that we have for state contacts, and the Arizona link is working. So you should be able to click on that to get more information about where to go as far as the state level goes, however you decide to do that. And then if you can also fill out the registration for the sign up, just to make sure that we're not duplicating any state here. I'm going to share that link here too again. So if there's no more questions, thank you everybody. We're going to stop the recording now. And how can people contact you if they have questions, Stephanie?
I can put my contact information in the chat if everybody wants. Otherwise, however, I'm very much available. I don't mind answering questions from people. It's not a problem at all.
What's the best email to contact you at?
It's very long, so I'll put it in the chat. It's stephanie.gaetelvanderpass@gmail.com.
Okay.
I've been meaning to set up an EDS Wisconsin one, but as most people know, I have been very, 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 very sick for the last few weeks, and that is an understatement. Like, today is the first day in 3 weeks that I have not had a fever over 102 degrees. So
I'm glad you're feeling better.
That's a
I'm so
bonus.
glad you could do this.
Yeah, I'm much, much better today. So IV antibiotics for the win.
Stephanie,
Okay.
I do have one quick question.
Yeah.
Can you explain briefly what a press release is?
A press release is something that encourages a news source, generally a newspaper, but it's also can be sent to TV stations. And now that we're in 2019, there are some equivalents of newspapers that are just online that basically says this is something that happened. Here's the information about what happened. We think it's newsworthy. Here's the basic summary of what it is. And if you have more questions, here's who you contact about it. And so
Good question.
yeah, a lot of the times, if you send a press release, if it's something like this, you'll get a blurb in the newspaper. But if you're in a smaller area, they may be super interested about doing a human interest piece. So it's definitely worth sending.
And I'll make sure to get a link to the one that Stephanie shares with us.
How do you get a hold of the local news ahead of time to do news piece at the time of the proclamation? Like,
like I said, there are always news people assigned to city meetings. So you're going to have news people there generally. If you're looking to get more than that, there is always contact information for, like, if you have a news tip on the websites of all of the different news sources. So you can contact them. There's generally an email address. And so you could let them know that the city of La Crosse is passing a proclamation for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome this evening. Here's the information about it. And then just let them know the time and the place, and maybe attach the proclamation so they know, what that actually is, and see if any of them bite. I mean, you can even send it to TV stations and see if any crews show up.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. I'd like to
People sent lots of tips about me, and they showed up at my apartment. So,
Okay.
it could work.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And Stephanie put her email here in the comment section, and I'll also share that on our YouTube page when we share your video. Thank you, Stephanie.
Not a problem. Thank you so much, everybody. Good luck.
All right, we're done recording.